I feel like
curious
this.
to understand how, in this day and age,
Yeah.
when I see like,
They're not
especially not to meddle too much into sort of like politics and race,
Sure,
but when I see like black people and Africans
Yeah.
are still religious, especially in the West,
Yeah.
I try to make an extra effort to talk to them and engage and
Okay,
see the thought
I appreciate
process and
that.
what led them there, and also let them know that I'm non-religious,
Yeah.
and also get them to try to see
No,
where
you
I'm
see,
coming
this is the
from,
thing. When you
how
don't
I
have
arrived at
phones,
that.
Sure. I'm very interested.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know, the
that's
winners.
something I can talk about. And part of the reason I'm doing this is to improve my public speaking as well.
Sure.
I want to do a lot more often because I feel like I do have interesting insights. That
I agree. I think the more voices, the more
Absolutely.
reasonable voices. So if someone can look at you and be like, "Right, he's atheist," but then they don't have this caricature of what an atheist
This is
is.
the problem, yes.
Right.
It's about fighting a caricature
Yeah.
and encouraging conversation, especially in the black space.
Yeah. I
Like
agree.
many record tones, and I'm
I
not going to
agree.
be referring to that much, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like the driving idea
I
behind
agree.
what
I
we're doing
agree.
and trying to
I agree.
encourage that kind of conversation. I think it's very much needed.
Because you know what, with me as well, as a religious person, I can, someone as a Muslim who identifies as a Muslim, I can always also step away and look like, okay, this is something else. This is me and
I like that.
my brother, you know,
I like that.
my black brother.
Yes,
We have
I
to
really
have-
respect that. You know why? As somebody that used to be in a religion as well,
Yeah.
it's easy to completely submit to the idea to the point where you might, without sounding disrespectful,
Yeah.
you might lose context of certain things as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And to an extent, I feel like that's by design.
Yeah.
And there are some
Yeah.
strong forces that are in play here.
Yeah,
We'll talk
yeah,
complete some
yeah,
more.
yeah.
I bought one of your mics.
Which one? This one.
See this right there?
Where's your mic?
This one.
No, let me see. No, let me see.
Mic check is on. Mic check.
1, 2, 1, 2. Somebody called me to the party. Is there something wrong?
Mic check.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know what? Let's move this a bit backwards. And bro, please, you lot stay in one position. After. Don't move because you
Okay.
do that a lot.
Alright. Alright, cool.
Oh,
Like inside, yeah. So in there, yeah. Okay.
Okay, bro.
Yeah. Okay, so brothers and sisters. Sorry, my name is Dawood.
I'm Osas.
Osas.
Osas, yeah.
Osas. Okay, cool. So we've been talking very beautiful conversation. So Osas, I would be very interested because I think we've had a pre-conversation. Interested on identifying as an atheist. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm going atheist. I'd say agnostic atheist.
Okay.
But I understand from my experience here, people are really particular about the labels. Some people
Yeah.
say atheist, maybe say
Yeah.
I have my reasons for going with that
Yeah.
agnostic atheist label.
Sure.
Which I can go into more detail.
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, sure.
and you were just about, we start recording, talking about morality and how you derive it and these type of things.
Morality.
Or do you want to do it a bit more personal in terms of
The
your
context. That
how
makes
you,
sense. It's a good
yeah,
point.
what happened to you and
Because of what we said earlier
Yeah.
about, just to give you context, we're talking about how there's an issue with the conversation at the moment when people from different ideas discuss, especially in
Yeah.
these areas. It's personal to me because I think it's bolted in my kind of ideas.
Yeah.
I think religion is tied with that. So to have these conversations to achieve the goals that I want,
Yeah.
we have to be able to engage at a certain level.
Yeah.
We have to see eye to eye, and
Yeah.
we don't have to agree with everything, but exchange ideas respectfully.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So, I was born into a Catholic family.
Yeah.
My dad was a Catholic from the southeast of Nigeria. My name is Osas. I'm from the Edo tribe. Benin to be specific. So yeah, my dad was a soldier in a barracks where we were Catholics, but then in a barracks you also have mosques. So
Okay.
I was fortunate enough to grow up around Muslims and Christians, and because military life is different from civilian life, everybody lives together as one unit type of thing.
Yeah.
Even though we had our different faiths,
Yeah.
I play football with Muslims, and I go to eat. Like you said earlier, when you're having your Eid, Eid was a big deal where I grew up.
Yeah.
We watch the Rams. I mean, there's an animal rights thing about that now.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is I saw the beauty of Islam growing up, and I was lucky to experience it, because coming to the West and growing up here, I can see how that can be. You can have like caricatures of these ideas, and people can immediately demonize, something, and it makes it hard to engage.
Yeah.
So I to give you context, yes, I grew up in that kind of setting, and I lost my dad at when I was around 10, 11, 12-ish. But still remained a Christian. I moved to the UK in my late teens. I was still a Christian, but at that point I had become Pentecostal.
Okay.
The reason my dad was Catholic in the family, so we switched. Became Pentecostal, and do the whole Holy Ghost and everything. I did everything except speaking in tongues. I always felt funny to me, even as a Christian. It just so I did everything. I did preaching. I would go and I would dream, and things would come to pass. So I experienced all these things. I experienced feeling the presence of the Holy Spirit and everything. So when did I start to switch ideas? This was when I moved to the UK. And in my evangelism, when I talk to people, I hear these different ideas that strike me weird, because it's like, that's funny. This is not what I was taught. Evolution and all that stuff, and what we were taught in church at the time. They give you these answers, or when you ask too many questions, it doesn't sit right with the pastor, or the guy clearly doesn't know what he's talking. You can see he's just prophet or whatever. So something always felt funny, but I genuinely believe. I thought, faith is blind, it's not by sight, it's go. So when did I start to change? I started to change when I wanted to genuinely know God. I had been through like a trial and tribulation phase. And it was from going through that, I thought this was God trying to sort of reach to me in a way. So I went in on the religion and tried to understand the theology, history, context, and all that stuff, because that's just the way I learned. So that way, when I have these conversations with people, I can defend the religion well.
Sure.
But in doing that, I just started to notice some things didn't quite sit right, and some things were demonstrably not true with what I knew or what I thought to be true. So I got to a crossroads. You can accept truth, or you can sort of continue with blind faith. Sure. It was the end game here. If you continue with blind faith, things might work out. But applying and subscribing to the idea of truth is what brings about the results we want. Right? Say 2 + 2 is 4. When we make calculations and predictions based on that, we get results that we expect. Right? And I just wanted honesty, really. I just wanted to know the truth. If I want to be, you do have Christians, for instance, that believe in certain scientific truths, but can still subscribe to the idea of Christianity. Same with Muslims as well, different ideas out there. But for me, my thing was, if it's not true, I will fall out. Because I just wanted truth. And it was around this time I was going through a phase of like finding myself in a way, still am. But at that point in time, I started to learn about, African history and where it comes from, and colonialism and all that stuff. So it kind of ties in a way. So for me, that's why I like that you asked me to give you some context. Because I think this thing is personal for different people. Even though you're an atheist or whatever, you still have this personal journey. You have to go through it. Ideas and answers, you have to be bolted down in. So with my belief now, I wanted to discover truth, and that was it. It was in my further pursuit of that truth I didn't discover that certain things just don't sit right. So when I talk to people, I haven't been a Christian person before, and this circles back to what I was saying earlier about trying to understand the other guy. When I was religious, I wasn't a bad person. I can still remember the experiences and the feelings. It's the same person, but you just have a different experience. You get exposed to different information. And then it's left for you to decide. I decided to drop religion or stop, or what's wrong there? I decided to employ a new type of approach or system of thinking, which is skepticism. And not just for religion, for everything. Because I then discovered that people lie and history can be twisted and all that stuff. If what you want is genuine truth, but the truth can be ugly, and that's the thing. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. So yeah, I just kind of went through this journey, read up on the history, context, colonialism, how Christianity was introduced, how other religions were formed, and you know, Judeo-Christian, the background behind it, Islam, you know, how it ties to Judaism, all that stuff. Just to give me a rough idea. So when I have these type of conversations, especially with my people, because this is the driving force, is understanding how religion has affected Africa, especially the Abrahamic religions. It has, in a way, you know. And I'm still learning, but from the few dots and the little dots I can connect, I push myself away from the idea. And when I meet other black people that are still involved, they're still, you know, in tune with the idea, it's fine. I just try to get them to see things from my perspective. Sure. I don't like the idea, that's fine. I believe religion is something that is a tool, it can be used to, like a knife. You use a knife to kill somebody, you can use it to cut your fruit to eat. If you're using it to be a good person, it's perfectly fine. Problem is where we come from, me and you. A lot of people are using that in dangerous ways, and you've seen it. And this is an active effort to force people to think a certain way. That's it, really. That's
you know, it's so crazy in terms of like the reality of the world and how society perceives labels. We are sort of diametrically on opposing ends of like how we view reality in a sense when it comes to the metaphysical world. But there's not a single thing that you said I could disagree with, and that's such the paradox in here.
It's weird, isn't it?
That there's so much stuff that you just said that I can just agree upon, you know. And I feel like sometimes what it is with religious folks or people who consider themselves to be following a faith or a dogma or a doctrine is that once they hear a label, atheist, finished. Anything they say afterwards, they're gonna try to find a use to wrestle you.
This is why it's hard to. There was a conversation I had with Hamza last week. It was like, what are you? I said agnostic atheist, and it's a good segue to explain what I mean by that, by the way. But he just kind of insisted, it's not, no, you're either atheist or agnostic. I said, no, I'm agnostic atheist. I can explain what I mean by that. And they try to like lock you into these labels, and it makes it hard to have a conversation. Doesn't work. Agnostic atheist, let me explain what I mean by that. So there are different schools of thought, and in philosophy what I've come to understand is that in philosophy, atheist is the active claim that there's no God, right? Which means you made a claim and you have to defend that claim, and you know all the whole baggage that comes with it. Agnosticism is thought to be sitting on the fence. I can't disprove there's a God, I can't say there's a God, there's no God type of thing.
So how do you reconcile the two?
Sorry?
How do you reconcile the two?
Right. From my understanding of it and the definition of it, a theist is somebody that believes. Right? A Gnostic is somebody that knows, that claims to know. So you have people, and you do have people, and this will make sense to you now. You do have people in the faith that claim they believe in God, but they don't know that God exists. And you do have people that claim that they believe, but they also know. You see, I've seen those Christians. I'm sure you've met those people too. Right. So the point is, theism speaks to belief, Gnosticism speaks to knowledge. So an atheist doesn't know, doesn't believe rather. An agnostic doesn't know. So an agnostic atheist is one that doesn't believe or doesn't claim to believe, but also doesn't know. One that lacks belief and doesn't know. Just to make that differentiation between people that might believe, or rather, that might believe but don't claim to know. And then people that believe but also claim to know. Does that make sense?
Because to be honest, I feel like I personally don't understand why there is such an emphasis. I mean, definitions are important, but I don't, because I remember there was a brother here from America, Jake, and he had the same conversation with someone else, and he said, well, it doesn't, there is no way that you can be an agnostic and an atheist at the same time. But I'm thinking in terms of like the elasticity of like language and the way language changes, it's very hard to pinpoint something's definitions.
That's why it helps to understand the terms on which you're when people talk, it's like, what do you mean when you say this? It's exactly because of that, because language is very nuanced. You say one thing, one word can have a similar meaning, but under different contexts, it might mean something else. So it helps to clarify, and it also helps to be talking with somebody that's willing to go there with you. Because some people just go, no, you're an atheist, it's like this, or you know. For me personally, I don't see why there is a need to be so stringent on like hung up on like definitions. If you personally, because I do see this, I've met people before, and no one can deny this. They say, look, I do not know if there's a God, but I believe there's something. It does.
people like that do exist.
To bring it back to the conversation, because I see the guys asking how many minutes.
No, that's fine. It's fine.
Content.
Yeah.
You do believe in God, right?
Yeah.
What convinces you that this God is the God that you worship?
Okay.
Right?
So when I became Muslim, that was the first time I was very intimate in terms of my spirituality and aware and conscious about spirituality. I was very actively seeking it, you know. And when I had Islam, that was sufficient to me. You know, there was no other questions popping up. I was just living my life as a Muslim. I was content. But then, as you keep learning and you're engaging with other people, there are obviously questions that are popping up. And I think the first very question that I was starting to have was my relationship to Christianity. Because being of a Christian background, I was like, okay, I used to be Christian. What is Christianity? Right? And with time and learning and engaging with people, my appreciation for Christianity became very authentic, in the sense that I understood what Christianity, the tenets of Christianity, and I also was able to look at some things in Christianity like, okay, you know what, I'm not convinced by that. Talking about conviction,
yes,
right?
I get that, yeah.
There were certain things, okay, I'm not convinced by that based upon this and that. So when it came to Islam, I think the first thing that really convinced me was the Prophet Muhammad's life and him as a prophet. I remember when I said to you previously off camera, when I was 14 years old, I had a conversation with another Muslim and we were talking about the prophets, and I was so amazed at the striking resemblance between those people. And those men or prophets, they make claims. They make certain claims about God, they make certain claims about humanity. And I was impressed by the way the prophet lived as a person. And then when I was convinced by him, I started to engage even more with the Quran as the text, and it started to reveal itself even more. And I was like, wow, this stuff is just, do you know what I mean? There's answers to questions that I have. It has a chronology. It coincides with me as a Christian previously. You know, it talks about things that certain systems do not talk about or are silent about, or maybe it's lost in history. Like, for example, Buddhism, something that I've started looking into it a bit more. So just Buddhism, there's certain things Buddhism just doesn't comment on. It says it's not necessary for you to know. No, Islam does comment on it, and that I have questions. Buddhism might not want to. Let me give you an example of Buddhism, for example. They don't give you necessary answers, from what I understand, about the soul or about gods and your relationships to gods. It's more about reduction of harm and pain, you know, to live your life as painless as possible, and that there's these four noble truths that you have to follow.
That's interesting. You know, right? Funny, in all my research into religions,
yeah,
Buddhism is what I have found to be the most relatable in terms of
interesting
the realities of life that I've come to, you know, to come to terms with.
Yeah.
You know, life is suffering, those kind of ideas, and the values that you have to come up with yourself to give your life meaning.
Yeah.
That kind of idea. I can see why you don't necessarily need to invoke the idea of a soul from that, which is why you could argue that they don't have those kind of texts in there. My pushback with the soul statement would be, how do we know we have a soul?
Yeah.
How do you know you have a soul?
How do I know that I have a soul? I mean, first of all, it's via religious text. But if I was to divorce and leave it, there is something that makes me who I am and makes who you are. That's just like, I mean, soul in Greek means pneuma, right? Breath. So there is a particular breath that oozes out of you, you know. And the other day I was, and this was observation, I was in Leicester Square, and there was like, you know, them people who like perform like these performances where they like still and then like painted, frozen into like a sculpture.
Like a bronze paste. Yeah.
Exactly. So for a split second, I was confused whether it was a sculpture or a human being.
Yeah.
Right? But then I stepped to the side, And I saw some, even though she was still, there was something still very vibrant oozing out of her. And I believe that's what the soul is. I think that's what the soul is. It's like, for example, if I see a leaf being moved by the wind, and I see an animal and grass moving, the motions are different. I believe the motion that makes the, and I'm not sure if it's an animal or not, but there's a motion, right?
There's some life to it when you see
It's
the
life. And I believe that's, on an empirical, I haven't obviously been able to, but just surface level, right? I believe that's what the soul is. You know, I believe that's what the soul is.
And I used to
And all the lies about him.
I think a good format for the conversation would be, because I have been, religious before. So when you say these things, I completely get it.
Yeah.
I guess a good format with the conversation would be to hear what you say and then give you my thoughts of how I dealt with those kind of, when I had those questions as well, and how I went about, forming an opinion that I have arrived at now.
Yeah.
I'll make it easier to converse and maybe throw some questions out there.
Sure.
So I thought that too. I used to believe I had a soul, but I then, like I mentioned earlier, I started to employ skepticism to everything. Not just religion, just how do you know these things and what evidence, what data is there to support your opinion. So some of these evidence is good or bad. Some people are convinced by conversation, which is fine in some cases. But I feel like with certain claims, the more...
There has to be a bit more
the
meat.
more out there the claim is, the more people should be questioning the claim. Does that make sense? You know? So with stuff like a soul, that there's stuff out there which people can relate to. What evidence do we have out there? Apart from what people say and what we see, there's not really anything tangible out there. That I know of anyway. Could be wrong.
I agree.
And then when I look at just the physics of it and the actual biology, what does that say about it? There are things that your brain will pick up that you wouldn't consciously pick up. In VFX, in the VFX industry, there's this thing called the uncanny valley. Okay. Which is when they do like a CGI character. People would look at them and be like, that looks real, it looks good, but there's something off. It's called the uncanny valley. CGI is so good now. The uncanny valley, exactly. What's that? It's basically your brain can pick up certain visual cues and things when you look at a person's face that you don't consciously know, but it's there because we've evolved like this over the years. What I'm trying to make is, when we see things that we don't necessarily understand, like the way, the motion of the grass, like you mentioned earlier, on the animal, I've come to learn that it's helpful to not immediately jump to something metaphysical, because there's almost often an explanation for these things, and if you explore and you show some healthy skepticism and be like, before I conclude to that, let me see why. What could I be wrong? Can I be this? And this thought process is stuff that has been formalized. It's stuff that people, smart people, have sat down and thought about ways that in a world where people are, people can be error prone and we can make mistakes, you need to come up with a rigid structure and you can use to apply to certain situations and get expected answers. Which I understand to be the scientific method. And it factors in the flaws of the human condition, the fact that we can be deceived, we bend to illusions and stuff like that. So that's why when you make a scientific finding, it doesn't just go there. It gets peer reviewed. It's reviewed. So you go to another expert that knows the stuff too, or the past stuff. You go through it and then go around the book, peer reviewed, it's solid. That's the kind of process, that skepticism and that sort of doubt that you have to employ as a human being in an error-prone world.
But there's a sense of idealism in what you're saying. Idealism, in sense of like, it's a very romantic way of looking at how the scientific method works in reality, or for what we know today. But I think also what I was trying to, just before I go to that, I think what I was trying to talking about was about sort of the hard question of consciousness. There is this and this is what Buddhism actually says about the heart. From a good friend of mine, Alex, he knows a bit more about Buddhism. He tells me it's not that Buddha outright denies the soul, but he says he doesn't comment on it too much. And it's very interesting because there's a verse in the Quran where Allah says, and the Jews went to the Prophet and they're asking about the soul. They said, tell us about the soul. And then the verse comes down and the Prophet says, Allah says in the Quran, and they ask you about the soul, and know about the soul, there's not much to know about. It's a very mysterious thing, you know. But going back to so even religion per se does not really comment too much about the soul. It's not something that, I mean, we have certain indicators and psychologically how we would define the soul, right? So there's a merging between the mind and the soul, i.e. being consciousness, and then the different types of the soul. So that's that. But the essence of it, what it is, I couldn't tell you anything. It's something that I don't have the remit to do so. The other thing about the scientific thing that you said, I believe that the scientific method, 100%, the way it's developed with the history of science, has had or still has its place in human history in terms of how to come to conclusion, how to
scientific method. Yes?
Yeah, how to observe the world and to engage and to make sense of the world how it is. But I think what people sometimes forget is it's just one way of looking at the world. It's one way. It's not.
Yes, I agree.
Even like if you look in like the history of science, it's one category amongst many. There's people like Husserl, for example, a phenomenologist who looks at the world from like a phenomenological point of view, as an phenomenological point of view, as a phenomenological.
Oh, okay. What does that mean?
Basically, experiences. Right. There is this thing called consciousness, and this thing, consciousness, experiences thing in a particular way, in a subjective way. You know, why and how, and so they explore this, and they try to use experimentations and other things as well. There is a big movement in science who are anti-positivists. So anti-positivism just means basically they say, look, you empiricists, you're gone wrong. We agree with certain things of you, but you go wrong here, here, and here, and here. And they're very strong arguments.
Grounded on the scientific method.
Yes.
Argument.
Yeah. So
is there like a theory?
It's more philosophical.
Right.
To be fair, it's more philosophical polemic.
To be clear.
Yeah.
My own. So even in the realms of science,
yeah,
you will have errors. Why? Because there are humans in there, and this is why I said earlier that all those things are factored into the thought process of the scientific process, and that you might be dealing with somebody that may be a bad faith actor and that they want to manipulate, data. Isn't there like a killed down man thing where a scientist sort of like manipulated bones and stuff?
I have
read up on it. I don't remember now, but the point being, you can have bad scientists too, and the way to get them is the scientific method. That's how you fish these people out.
I'm not even saying that the commentary I'm making, I'm just trying to basically lay down a landscape on how people come to conclusions and come to know. And I feel like it's very important for our viewers to understand that, the scientific method has a very solid ground. But if you look at the history of like how people come to know, epistemology, there are various of ways on how to come to know. The scientific method is a contester among many. That's the point I'm trying to make. Just quickly, sorry, let me... So going back to what you're saying about peer reviews and so, for example, one of the critiques that we have today against the scientific method, and bear in mind, I think that the scientific method is a sophisticated way on how to come to know certain things, but there are certain things you perhaps might not be able to know. Two criticisms that we have today is that one, the academia has been suffering for decades now. This thing called the reproduction crisis, i.e. So basically, they've been basically looking at certain findings that people have acquired through the scientific method, and they've tried to replicate certain methods, and they would fail all the time.
Do you have any ideas of one of these methods?
So basically, say for example, there was an established theory and it's been tested in the past, and someone would come, 50 years later, and they would try to do the same experiment, and there would be a struggle to replicate the same study. And it's not just one person, there comes another person, and then obviously the question is, well, if this was established at one point and it was peer reviewed, why can't we replicate it?
Do you have any examples?
I can't think of definite examples, but this is something, if you look into it, the crisis of reproduction of experiments, this is something that we struggle nowadays with the scientific community. The second thing is peer reviews. We have a massive issue with peer reviews as we speak right now in the academic community, which is the way money is allocated and the way money is won to fund studies is based upon industry, particular industries. So if you want your study to be be funded, you almost have to politically align yourself with certain industries in order to get funding. That's one. That then causes an issue where people do not have the time or the resources to peer review stuff. So, for example, there's a study, there's actually an experiment academics have done, but this was back in 2017. It was an academic journal, right? And there was a paper, it was cited and everything else, but the claims in there were bogus, right? And they did an experiment. They said, look, let's see if there was
a science journal.
Yeah, right. Let's see, an established one as well, by the way. Yeah, let's see if they're going to be able to pick up on what's it called. And it worked. It basically worked. They didn't pick it up. They published the thing. So this was just a snapshot on what is really happening in the academic community. Right. That there is not enough funds. People do it on their free time to peer review. So peer review is a tool that is good, by the way. I'm not saying it's bad, but it has definitely its problems in the modern world. And this is pretty much what the scientific method is kind of based upon in the past. There are certain studies, there are certain experiments you as a person have never done yourself, nor have you gone to look at them. But there's a trust, integrity between scientists, to trust your fellow scientists that this very thing has been peer reviewed, this thing has been experimented, therefore I can take this on and propagate the idea or the theory. And I am not a purist in that sense. I understand that human beings have limitations, and I also understand that and that's my last thing I'm saying, sorry, right? And I also understand that progress in knowledge, in acquiring knowledge, epistemology is dialectical, i.e. one day we believe this, then a different information comes in, then we believe that. And we build ourselves up with time. You know?
That last statement.
Yeah.
When you say one day we believe this and the other day we believe that, the new belief, does it go against the previous belief?
Yeah, right. So there might have been like the belief that the earth was flat, and then right, and we know now no, it's a globe, right? So it changes, and I feel like there's room for it to happen, and I don't think because of that the scientific method. Assalamu alaikum. I'm recording, have you?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So I don't believe that the scientific method because of that is bad, but it's good for certain things. It's good for certain things. I don't think it's something that you can spread everywhere and start arbitrarily apply it to everything in reality. You
don't believe what was the last thing?
I don't believe that the scientific method is a method that you can just spread thin at all areas of life, and I think reality is just too complex to do that.
I get that. I think the scientific method is, like I said earlier, is a result of all these issues you mentioned.
Yeah.
Where we live in an error-prone world where there are people, the bad faith actors that want to manipulate things and all that stuff. The idea behind the method is, if done correctly, again, it's a tool, like you said. It can be done well, it can be done badly. So you will find these things where, and in journals, and again, we're talking about scientific journals. That's another thing I was going to mention. But if I get there, with the scientific method, it's designed, especially the peer review process, if done properly, and the idea behind it is to remove any sort of subjectivity from the process, especially with the hard sciences. So we're talking physics, we're talking your chemistry and your biology and all that.
Sure.
All these things, right? The scientific discoveries from there are things that are verifiable and things that, when done properly, irrespective of who does it, those constants are true, right? So things like the idea of evolution and things that are verifiable, basically. quantifiable, the more quantifiable, the better. I feel like they need to round up. Is that?
Yeah, unfortunately, but you know what?
You still need to talk. I mean, we'll exchange these.
Us? Bro, we need to have this conversation. You have to be a more recurring, what's it called, guest and talk and say what you think and how you view reality.
I think there's room for genuine conversation to be had, and there are people out there that just want to know the truth. I think that's why I choose to engage with religious people, because I used to be religious, and my thing then was I just want the truth. If you want to believe in faith or whatever, it's perfectly fine. But there are people that want the truth and they want to live their life by that, and they live in places where living your life by the truth gives you better results. I think that's my closing statement.
Definitely. You know what? I will try to remember this point, and next time you come back, because I know you had a very good rebuttal coming, but with time constraints, I really appreciate. Salam alaikum, brother, sister. Again, you saw this a beautiful exchange. Different school of thought, different perspectives, but our humanity was preserved, and I think that's what this is really all about. Dropping the ego, engaging, and being in the pursuit of truth. That's what this is all about, man. This is what life is all about. Anyway, thank you very much, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah, just like that. Lovely. I'm here for the whole day, so sure.
I
That's he. I don't know who that is. I don't know who that belongs to. Who does that belong to? Do you know?